Hey guys, welcome back to the Gear Channel. I'm just in the garage here playing with carburetors today. So about 4 weeks ago I posted a video on Canadian cold starts. I fired up the Chevelle after it sat for about 30 days. That has a 750 Holley carburetor on it. Technically it doesn't have a choke, and I just wanted to prove how that thing would fire up and run just fine with your old basic carburetor on here. Now a lot of guys, these things tend to get a bad rap, so I thought I'd get a little bit more in depth as to, you know, the little pitfalls and challenges guys run into with carburetors, and it kind of, you know, they tend to opt out for the you know, the fuel injection conversion kits and LS swaps and all that sort of thing. So there's a couple of little things that I can touch on here that'll help a guy kind of easily diagnose. These are very simple devices, and there's a couple of little things that we can go over here quickly that'll help a guy, you know, sort out a little problem. Anyway, now this is a 750 Slayer Quick Fuel Technologies carb. It's essentially a Holley carb. They're not much different. They will take you know, Holley jets and power valves and that sort of thing. So, and from what I understand, Holley actually bought Quick Fuel back in about 2013. So essentially this is identical to a Holley carb. So this one, 750 Slayer, vacuum secondary, and I'm going to use this as an example today. You know, and give you guys some quick little tips that'll help you get these things working perfectly. So now I think the number one thing that a guy tends to run into is vacuum leaks. Vacuum leaks is a real common problem with carburetors, or anything for that matter, and it's a real easy way one real easy way to figure out where your vacuum leaks are. You know, to find the source of the problem is to use you know, something like this, or a carb cleaner, anything with a straw on it. Keep in mind this stuff is it's combustible, so you want to stay away from, you know, hot areas on the engine. But you can spray this you know, around the base of the carburetor or the intake, all your hoses under the hood, and that'll help you identify any vacuum leaks. So that's probably the number one problem guys tend to run into. Another thing is fuel pressure. Now I always run a fuel pressure gauge on all my cars, all my carbureted vehicles, and there's a couple of different versions of pressure gauges you can get, and I would tend to stay away from the liquid filled ones. As those things get warm, it will actually the pressure will actually drop on the needle. So you may have 10 psi run into your carb, but the needle will actually be down to about 6 or 7 psi. As they warm up, that needle will go down on those liquid filled gauges. It's happened to me personally. So if you can find a gauge that is not liquid filled, you know, it'll work better for you. Anyway, this one has now these quick fuels actually have little sight glasses in them, kind of a handy thing, both on the primary and the secondary bowls, whereas the Holley would have just a little plug, a little sight plug. So now to set the float level in these, it's just a simple little lock nut on top of the carb, and once you undo that screw, it takes a 5/8 wrench, and if you turn the nut clockwise, it runs the float down. If you run it counterclockwise, it'll lift the float up. So basically on the Holley carburetors, you want just the fuel to trickle out right at the very base of the sight glass. With the quick fuels, they like to have it right in the center. So fuel pressure and float level are very important. Once those two things are set, then you can get on to adjusting the carburetor. Now there's another little tip here I can give you with the Accelerator pump. Now they say that you should have about 14 thousandths in between the pump and the pump arm here, and this can be adjusted by running these little nuts in and out. So you want that Accelerator pump to move right when you're on the throttle here. So you don't want any tension on it, but you want it to move as you move the throttle. So that's the proper adjustment for that. Now another little tip I can give you guys here, if you're running a large camshaft in your car, this has happened to me also. There's little transition slots right at the on the primary side here. You can see a little transition slot, and this guy should look like a tiny little square. All you should see exposed here is approximately 20 to 30 thou. And if you've got an overexposed transition slot, you will tend to get an off idle stumble, and you could run fat at idle as well. And what a lot of guys tend to do as a fix for this is they'll drill little tiny holes in the primaries throttle blades, and you know that once you do that, that blade is, you know, you can't put that hole back on there. So I've seen guys drill the holes too big and then use epoxy to try to fill in the holes. These things are staked down, so they don't come off very easily, and you don't want to have to replace these blades. So one nice thing on the Hollies and the quick fuels, you can actually adjust the secondary side and open that up a little bit. So what happens is guys tend to screw in that that curb idle screw too far, overexpose the transition slot, and that's it. You know, in circumstances where you've got low vacuum at idle, with a big camshaft, this will happen to you. Instead of you know, maybe using the timing to bring the idle up, advance the timing, guys will actually just grab a screwdriver and run the curb idle in a little too far. It'll overexpose that slot, and it'll become kind of a problem for you. So like I say, you'll get an off idle stumble, and it'll be real fat as well. So one thing you can do, now the Hollies have a little it'll be a blade screwdriver that will fit in here. The nice thing on the quick fuels, it's a little 3 30-second Allen key, and I can actually adjust this while the carb is on the car. I can just get that little Allen key in there and make an adjustment to open up the rear, the secondary throttle blades, just to get a better idle. So you can leave the front slot square like it's supposed to be, that 20 or 30 thou exposure, and wind in the secondaries just enough to bring that idle up so it'll idle nicely for you. So that's another little tip. And you always want to, you know, before you install a carb, make sure that that transition slot's where it's supposed to be, because it'll create a lot of problems for you. So yeah, just a couple of little tips and tricks and things to look out for. Like I say, probably the number one thing is vacuum leaks, guys. Number two thing, I find oh gosh, what's the word for it here? My accelerator pump isn't adjusted properly, and fuel pressure, again, really important, and to know which carburetor you're running. Of course, if you're running a Edelbrock, you can't see the fuel level, so you got to get real precise with setting the float on those. These are nice, the Hollies and the quick fuels, it's all externally set. It's easy. These are center hung bowls, easy to get to, easy to adjust. And like I say, on the Hollies, you just want it to dribble out. If you shake the car, that should just dribble out the edge. On the quick fuels, they want to see it at about halfway up to sight glass. So yeah, a couple of little tips and tricks to keep your carb working good. Again, you want to make sure that the timing's set properly and all that kind of stuff, guys. So real simple little tips and tricks. So for the record, I have 3 friends that number of years ago, when fuel injection was the big thing, they all converted to it. One of my personal friends, he converted to the MSD atomic fuel injection, and I have 2 other buddies that converted to the Phytech fuel injection kits because they were tired of monkeying around with carburetors. And as of this year, the last fella converted back to a carburetor because he had had enough with the Phytech stuff. So all those 3 guys, I kept close tabs on them, because if fuel injection was, if it was going to be the latest greatest thing, well, those 3 fellas anyway, they've converted back to carburetors, because just a much simpler device and easy to work with. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to touch on a couple of little things with carbs. I didn't really do that in the last video about 4 weeks ago. My purpose of that one was just to do a cold start for you, and yeah. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again.